C'est quoi faire la tête?
Faire comme ça.
The French New Wave is one of the most transformative movements in cinema history. Emerging in the late 1950s and early 1960s, the movement radically shifted filmmaking by rejecting traditional styles in favor of experimental techniques, unconventional narrative structures, and a focus on exploring philosophical and political themes. The movement was spearheaded by a group of young filmmakers, many of whom were featured in or inspired by the French film magazine Cahiers du Cinéma. Often the credit for originating the new wave is given to Le Beau Sage, though stylistic trends of the movement can be traced back to Agnès Varda's La Pointe Courte. These writers advocate for a more personal and subjective approach to filmmaking. Influenced by Italian neorealism and American B-movies, the French New Wave embraced freedom, innovation, and artistic expression. Within the movement, two distinct groups would emerge, the right bank and the left bank of the new wave. The right bank. Right bank films are characterized by bold experimentation with narrative and form. These films often have a raw and unpolished quality.
Si vous n'aimez pas la mer, si vous n'aimez pas la montagne, si vous n'aimez pas la ville, allez vous faire foutre. Oh oh!
These films often have a raw and unpolished quality, and frequently follow the journey of a male outsider or are directed by men. The narrative structure is often fragmented, and untraditional editing techniques are the norm. Both of these add to these films' sense of spontaneity and edginess. In contrast, the left bank is more restrained in their experimentation. While still pushing boundaries, these films often favor linear narratives, focusing on character-driven stories that are often more political and personal. They tend to be less existential in their themes, opting to delve into the psychological or emotional landscape within their characters. While still avant-garde, left-bank films like Cleo from 5 to 7 are often more introspective and grounded in real human experiences rather than raw experimentation, making them feel less rebellious and more reflective.
Minute, beau papillon. Être laide, c'est ça la mort. Tant que je suis belle, je suis vivante et 10 fois plus que les autres.
For example, Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless is probably the most popular right-bank film. It breaks conventional film language in ways that feel amateurish by traditional film standards. The film's use of jump cuts, actors looking directly into the camera, and fragmented storytelling was revolutionary, breaking down the fourth wall and confronting the existential and political themes head-on. While you're watching this film, you're forced to acknowledge you are watching a Godard film. The film's rawness and spontaneous energy reflect the right bank's trend of rebellion. On the other hand, Agnès Varda's Cleo from 5 to 7, while still experimental, is much more polished feeling and narrative-driven. The editing is tighter, the structure is more cohesive, and the pacing is slower, which allows the audience to connect with the emotional and psychological complexities of its central character, Cleo. Unlike Breathless, which is fast-paced and action-driven, Cleo gives the audience space to breathe and reflect. The film's focus is on themes of identity, gender, and celebrity, but it does so through the character's internal journey rather than an overt political statement or directly addressing the audience. Arguably, if this was a Godard film, there would be a male character in the middle of the film who turns to the camera and tells you exactly what the movie's about.
Vous de la phrase de Rainer Maria Rilke selon laquelle la vie moderne séparera de plus en plus l'homme de la femme.
Rilke était un grand poète, il avait donc certainement raison.
Cleo's movements through the streets of Paris become a meditation on time itself, self-reflection, and the complexities of illness and womanhood. While both films share an influence of the French New Wave, their daring approaches to narrative, character, and editing reflect a broader divide between the left and right banks of the movement. Breathless is fast-paced and outward-looking, focusing on rebellion and social critique through this male-driven perspective. While in contrast, Cleo from 5 to 7 is introspective, character-driven, and slow. It's deeply personal, offering a more reflective examination of identity,